Hey folks, it's Mark here from Northeast Photographic. I am doing a video to show you the first two rolls, or basically some highlights from the first two rolls that I shot of Kodak's new film, Ektachrome E100. I was supposed to get these out a while back, but you may have noticed that we're really busy with our lab renovations. Getting everything set up and getting construction finished has basically taken all of my time, including just getting the fast orders out before I could get everything shut down. So I'm only doing this now because my office is about 90% done. The whole lab itself needs some more electrical work and a little bit more drywall work that we're kind of doing right now. But I'm hoping to be able to start reinstalling the equipment and some of the new equipment starting next week, and then hopefully I'll get the ball rolling. I know some of you have sent in orders. I will get those done as soon as possible when I reopen. Luckily, I'm going to be moving at a much faster clip when we do reopen because of the new processing equipment. But you can wait for that, and I'll make announcements and everything like that. But anyway, E100. I shot my first couple rolls. I went out a while back with my Nikon F6. I used a 50mm lens for the first few images, and then like a couple of macro lenses for the rest of it. I have a 60 and a 90mm macro, and they're really, really sharp. I also love the 50 as well. So I just wanted to go over a few images and sort of show you what I'm seeing. I scan these using my new scanning rig, which uses sort of camera capture technology. I think it does a much better job of scanning for chrome. Chrome specifically, not necessarily other films like color negative, than the Fuji Frontier. I think the Fuji Frontier really sets the baseline of standard quality for color negative film. It just does the perfect conversions from the original negative to the kind of color you would expect. It's how I base my processing even when I'm not using the Frontier. But for Chrome, it just kind of doesn't know what to do. Sometimes when you get to larger medium format sizes, it does okay, but it's when you compare a Chrome to a Fuji Frontier scan on the light table, or you have a light table next to your Fuji Frontier scan, you're just like, this is not what I was seeing. This is not kind of why I shot this film. So let's look at this image. This image, I don't think this is like a successful image. I say that because Spud is not really in focus here. But I like the colors, and I wanted to show you, it's really showing off like what chrome film does really well, which is these kind of like luscious colors that don't look unnatural. Like it doesn't even necessarily look like an Ektar kind of thing. They just have that great kind of vividness without looking otherworldly. And you can see the light streaming in through the trees here. I think it's just a great job capturing that golden sunset. And the matrix meter, I shot this basically in aperture priority. The matrix meter did a great job of doing that. I think that when you shoot transparency film, it's the opposite of using a color negative based technology or a negative based technology. So the matrix style meters from old SLRs and things like that were really geared towards these films, and they just do a better job because they're going to see those highlights and compensate for them, and they're going to try to not let you blow sections like this out while balancing the shadows. And an incident meter, I mean, it would have been, I don't know, I could have gone up to the highlights and then I could have tried to meter the shadow area and then balance the two, but that would have taken forever. So I just wanted to shoot the scene, and I still misfocused, but that might have been because you can see the camera settings here. I scanned them with the new scanner just to show you kind of what I was doing. The Nikon F6 does not screen recording, but does recording between frames. So you can see I shot at a 30th of a second at f1.4. There was no exposure compensation, and I was using a 50mm lens. It's just pretty handy when you want to kind of like go back and see your work. Anyway, the next image. So this guy I shot using spot metering mode instead of the matrix meter, because I knew that I wanted to expose for the moon, and I just wanted to show you what would happen when you expose for your highlights, which is what you're supposed to do with chrome film. You really lose the shadows. I think that this real image works. I think I could, to me, that it looks like the National Geographic type photos that I saw growing up when I was a kid. I don't think it doesn't bother me that you lose the shadow information. I think that like if I was going to try to use like neutral density grads, I could have brought it back and gotten like a really dynamic scene. But with 35 millimeter, it's just too much work. I'm not going to go to that level of preparedness. Like if I was going to shoot this image for that kind of thing, I would, I'd probably use a 4x5 or a medium format camera. For 35, you just want to capture the scene most of the time handheld, in my opinion. So that's what I did, and I think it did a great job. I wanted this show for comparison's sake. I just like pointed the camera the other way. This is what happens when you do expose for the shadows. The highlights just go white. There's just not enough latitude in the film to have information there. Some people might think that this is an acceptable image. I'm not one of those people. When you look at a chrome on the light table, or even you print an image like this and you just see this like washed out white, it would appear as just like the paper texture, or just the light table itself, because there is literally nothing there in the chrome. You're going to see the scratches on the light table and things. It just doesn't work. It doesn't look good. Again, you could bring it back with an ND grad, but with 35, I don't think so. I wanted to do like a texture shot to show kind of the level of detail that you got with this film. So I shot at f2.2, which is pretty sharp for the Nikon 50. And I just found, a great scene of texture out behind the house. I think I did do some sharpening here, but if we zoom in, you can see that there's very little grain. I mean, if any. It's slightly obscured by grain. I mean, I can kind of tell if I would have shot a digital image right next to this, honestly, I don't think the digital image would look that much cleaner. Like there might be a little, like some slightly less grain. I mean, it's certainly, well, digital doesn't have grain, but I just think that the fact that this image gets close to that kind of level of detail that I'm used to seeing from digital files from digital cameras is pretty incredible. I mean, when you take this film and you go to 120, it's going to be just a grainless film. Like you're not going to see any grain. I like this image of Moses. I just think he looks great. I think the fall colors look great. This one is another example of just the detail level present. This is it's going to be hard to see on like YouTube, but it's really capturing the grain. The focus was really good. It's just all detail in these grasses. I just think it looks really great. I wanted to show kind of what you could do print size wise with these scans. So the great thing about a 27-inch Retina display is that it's got a PPI, a pixels per inch, that is close to print level when it comes to the density on the screen. So when you're looking at the screen image on your 27-inch display, it's actually maybe a little bit bigger than you would actually print it, but it's closer than it's been before. So when you go to zoom in, that's pretty close to kind of your maximum actual print size. So let's go into Photoshop with this, and I'll show you kind of the resolution that you can have with these. When I open this up and you can see the image size window, you can see this is being displayed at 240 PPI, and so that creates in inches, about 19 by 28. That's huge. I mean, that's a poster. That's a poster size image from a 35 millimeter, and it looks awesome. It looks like it's going to be a little grainy at that size, but it's not going to be bad, especially compared to some negative films. The only one that would even come close would be Ektar, and that has like a very different color palette. And if we go to 300, you're talking about 22.5 by 15. Again, that's like a really big file size. I think that's great. You can go beyond what most people would expect to do with 35 millimeter, and that's not even accounting for like some careful up-resing where you could really get beyond that file size. So just to move on here to kind of like buzz through this. It's just a nice picture of Moses. Those perfect fall colors. I think this looks great. I love the contrast. I mean, that's really kind of what the scene looked like to me. So this is a Fuji Frontier scan. So I'm going to compare these to the one I showed you. And in my opinion, there just is no comparison. So you have your Fuji Frontier file here on the left, and on the right you have the camera capture scan. And this is what the transparency looks like, not this. This kind of tries to open up the shadows, and in doing so, you lose all the great color contrast that's present. You lose the golden light that I love so much. you lose the reason that you have for shooting chrome. Like if you wanted it to look like this, I mean, you could shoot Portrait 400 and it would probably look like a better version of this. You know, you'd have those kind of open details and you'd have more highlight information. So I just think like the Fuji Frontier just doesn't even come close. Here's another example where, oops, I just made the black and white. I wanted to hit C. There we go. Again, like this is more acceptable, but it's still just all of the great blues, these deep blues that you have here are just gone. I think the color balance is slightly off there in between the two, but it's close. As you go in here, the level of detail is just cleaner with the camera capture scan. It's like you can really see the film itself, whereas I don't know if this is probably not going to be that visible on the YouTube version of this video, but I'm seeing more just kind of noise than I am seeing grain. So I hope that this is kind of apparent to you, or as obvious to you as it is to me looking at these. Moving on, you know, one of my favorite images that I've been able to make on Ektachrome has been this one. I think that like it just looks awesome. I shot this with a macro lens close up on this oak leaf, just as the ground is kind of frosting over, and it's got the perfect level of contrast, all the detail that you would want. I mean, I can't believe that this is a 35 millimeter image. Like this is why National Geographic images looked so good back in the day, because they were shooting Ektachrome or they were shooting Velvia or Kodachrome or whatever it may have been, and they just knew what they were doing. And this is why transparency film was the medium of choice for commercial and editorial photographers from the last from a few decades ago. I just think this looks just absolutely stunning. Same with this one. It was kind of this is like a lesser version of the last image, but I really love the texture and detail present. You can see it with this is the second roll that I shot, and I was just getting better at it. I metered, you know, for Moses himself, because he's white. He's probably up here as the brightest tone in the image, and I just think it looks great. He's got an orange scarf on because it is hunting season out here and we don't want to get shot. This image, I love this image of Moses inspired, looking each way. I mean, I just can't believe the colors. I mean, this is accurate to the chrome, pretty much. I mean, the chrome looks a little better because the chromes actually always look better on the light table, but the scan, I mean, looks very, very close. I did hardly anything. I think to this, we can kind of see sort of what I did. Okay, a little bit of highlight and shadow recovery and a little bit of exposure, but I did bring in some clarity here probably for a nice contrast bump. Like when you add in tiny bits of clarity to transparency scans, you just get like a nice little micro contrast bump. We can go back to 0 and on some level you can almost hardly tell the difference. There is a difference there, but it's something that I must have just been seeing in that moment that I liked. I actually kind of like it here. It almost seems lower noise now that I re-examine this. Again, looking at this on my 27-inch monitor, it's like looking at almost like an 8x10 print, which is probably as big as I would ever print this, and it's awesome. I mean, it looks like my dogs are running around Middle Earth, having a great time. I mean, this film is probably going to be my choice color emotion going forward. I just, based on these examples, I just think I don't really want to go back to shooting portrait unless I'm literally doing portraits, or I just need a ton of dynamic range. This is just kind of how I want my film images to look. I went into an abandoned house. This is a project that I'll share more of later. But it has those old glass windows, and it's got those wavy patterns as the sun goes down, so I really liked that. I just like the way that the highlights rendered here, and it's kind of had this dark patterns otherwise. You have to say goodbye to shadow detail when it comes to chrome. You know, that's just comes with the territory. Here's another from the house. They patched this window with like a pie pan or like a baking pan or whatever this is. I shot this at a 30th of a second at 1.4, and it looks great. The colors are completely natural. You can zoom in on it, and you'll see that it's not tack sharp, but guess what? If I was making an 8x10, nobody would care. It would look great. This is the equivalent, like I was showing before, that would be the equivalent of like a poster size image, and it's only slightly soft. So that's what, if I could stress one thing, it's like, don't just hit Z when you examine your scans. Look at them the way that you would look at your print. It's kind of like in the darkroom when you would look at your contact sheet, you would then go and make an 8x10, and you go, oh yeah, it looks great. You wouldn't make a 20x24 and go, oh, it's kind of soft here in the corner. I don't know if that's working for me. And this is the last one I wanted to show. This was like very low light. You can see I shot it at 1.3 seconds at 5.6. I was on a tripod, I think, for this. But I just really loved how it rendered the colors here. You are kind of losing this, but it is a nice kind of golden color that's still there. I think the sun was probably right behind this old abandoned house. Yeah, I mean, as I was saying, I don't think I could be more thrilled with the way my Ektachrome scans looked. If we could go back to my favorite image here, I just think that this is absolutely killer. This film in large format is gonna just slay. I'm gonna keep trying it more in when it comes to pushing film, and I want to shoot it at 200 and 400 and see what it does. I think that's gonna give it a nice contrast boost. I mean, based on what I'm seeing now, it's got a really lovely natural contrast. I think that a boost will do a little bit more for it, make it look a little cooler, the same way we might look with Portra 160, but still hold on to that low grain. Anyway, we'll see. Anyway, this is my first video. I'm hoping to make a lot more of them, but I'm sorry that it's kind of crappy. We're learning here at Northeast Photographic on how to do better social media stuff. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you have any questions about Ektachrome, please reach out. I will do more coverage of it as we go forward, and I will obviously update all of you on the progress of the construction, and I want to get up and running as soon as possible, as I'm sure you do. Thank you again for all your support. I really appreciate that you guys have stuck with me, especially in these early days. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.